it is a big jump to just pack up your life in your home country and go and live in a chateau in France. You know, I think you have to be really, really wanting that dream to make that reality. I can give many examples of how I find French bureaucracy complicated, which I'm not really selling France here in this way, but I'm being honest.
You have to convince someone to buy a property in France with one sentence, but you cannot use wine, cheese, or baguette.
Okay, yeah.
Hi everyone, so today's guest is living proof that the French dream is real, although it might be a bit different from what we see on Instagram, but some survive it. So today we have Ben, so welcome to the show, Ben.
Thanks for having me, Fabian. Good to be here.
You're welcome. So well, let's dive deep straight away. You started a few years back, can't recall when, but a Facebook group for Château enthusiasts. And it grew into quite a community, like almost 100,000 members. So what do you think it tells about the attention it gets?
It's a good question. I mean, when I started the group, I did think it was going to be very niche. The origin of why I started the group, just to let you know, was when I moved to France, I joined all the expat Facebook groups about property, about what it's like to live in France. And I noticed there was probably 20, 30 property sites, like Southwest in France, Manoir, Maison de Maître, beach houses, Paris, everything. But there was not one group for Château. And I thought that's an interesting kind of gap. And I had just had my first Château client. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to start my own group and it'll just be a little niche kind of thing. There'll be like a handful of people that are like crazy about Château and we can just like exchange opinions and things like that. And suddenly I started posting some interesting listings and facts and figures about Château. It actually sort of changed the way I started the group was a bit different to how it is now. Now it's mainly listings, but when I first began the group, it was also about the history of some of these Châteaux that you can even rent for your holidays, events happening in Château. And as it turned out, like people just started loving the stuff that I was posting. And I discovered what was really working was interesting sales listings. Like if I thought I had found a really good deal or just something really incredible or interesting about the Château. And I think something that was quite different about my group was the tone of voice that I was using was different than a real estate agent posting their own listing. And people really seemed to gravitate towards this. Yes, yeah, okay. It wasn't the tone of voice of like a salesperson trying to sell their good or their Château, whatever the case may be. It was more the tone of voice of like, hey, look at this cool thing that I've found, like a friend talking to a friend, but still respecting the important architectural features of the property, talking maybe about pros and cons of the location. So I wasn't afraid to maybe say something like, this one's in the middle of nowhere. You know, maybe a real estate agent might not say that, but I was essentially being very honest about the property and the way I would write about it. And yeah, it ended up just getting really popular and it was kind of like a good vibes feeling in the group. And you're probably a member of most of the same groups as me. There are some groups where you get a lot of discussion of it gets very political and people kind of like getting quite negative on each other. And really we had none of this in the group. And I think maybe the positive feeling of it also contributed to its success.
Although you do work with a lot of different groups, like, I mean, well, some might have picked that up already, like you're Australian, but you work with Brits, you work with Americans, I suppose with other fellow Australians. Every group, let's call that, are probably different. Are there some that are more interested into castles than others, and some, well, let's be a bit controversial, are some more easy to deal with or to work with than others?
That is an interesting question. Well, so yes, my main client base is the English-speaking market. So Americans, British, Australians, some Canadians, South Africans, and then Northern Europeans as well. Basically anyone who's not French, who wants to buy property in France and they need help with how to do it. Who are the easiest to work with? I'm going to say and I'm not being biased, it's the Australians. I mean that. Like they, and maybe that's because there's an instant understanding and connection there. But I genuinely, we signed an acte de vente this morning for Australians.
Oh, with Australians?
With Australians.
Okay.
They just bought an incredible chateau. They've moved their whole family here, which is what I did 6 years ago. I really love these clients and I'm so happy for them. But they are an excellent example of just clients who are so easy to work with in the sense that they listen to our guidance. They came in saying, look, you guys are the experts. We need your help in this. Like, here's what we want to do, but we're relying on you for your expertise to make this happen for us. And when people are, I guess, coachable, if that's the right word, or like listening to your expertise, I find that is when we get the best outcome for the client, not when they try to run it too much. Not saying that they shouldn't input everything that they want, but I have found that the more people kind of let us do our process, let us guide them as to how it works in France and what based on our experience, what might work best for them. When they listen, I do find it works the best. And the Australians, to come back to your question, I've always found that they always listen to our advice.
Okay. So, well, it's very interesting because in a way, it relates to one of the questions I wanted to ask about, I would say, kind of the reality check. Obviously, people, well, I have Americans in mind, like, the Escape to the Château kind of, shows. But, they have this dream of buying a castle, and very often it might not be in pristine condition, maybe some renovations to do and stuff. So what's the background, the reality check to that, where they want to buy a castle, they think they have the money for it, but then there's renovation to also consider. So what kind of percentage do you think as a credible idea in terms of budget, like to see the whole process through, not just the purchase, but also like the renovation and then maintenance afterwards?
Okay, so good question. I mean, look, we would never take on a client that we don't vet properly to make sure that they have not only the funds to make the acquisition, but then to do the renovations and then to the ongoing maintenance. So I personally would check all of that out first before we even would take somebody on like that. In terms of the percentage, I would say people that come to us are pretty serious. So I would say maybe 1/3 of them turns out it's not going to work for them for financial reasons. And a big way that we can sort of, that we vet that is a lot of people come to us, and this is a completely normal question. They think that you can get a mortgage for a chateau, but in reality, it's very hard to do that. And so, because in their home country, like Australia, USA, England, you usually can get a mortgage for a property that you want to buy. And if you apply that logic to a chateau, you think, okay, great. Well, I have a really good deposit. Surely I can borrow 800,000 euros and complete this purchase. Well, unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. And so in situations like that, those people are ruled out. It is mainly cash buyers. So, and not everyone has €1 million just in the bank ready to make a cash purchase. So, some people get sort of knocked out at that first hurdle of like not being able to borrow money. If someone comes to me with they do have the amount of money to make the purchase, I obviously am going to make sure that, you are aware of the renovation costs that you're going to be coming up with soon, and of course the annual maintenance. So we will get all of that information for our clients first, so that they know, okay, to heat this chateau, it's going to be about 6,000 per year. Maybe it could be 10,000 if they're going to be running it as a commercial activity. So before they're signing up for this acquisition, we are arming them with all of the information they need to know, like, can I afford not just to buy it, but to run this place for the next 20 years and beyond.
Because I think recently you did post something on your social media about visiting a castle with a couple, I think it was Californians, which actually this castle belonged to another American who did not anticipate on this, and basically, well, I don't know if he went bankrupt, but did kind of an impulse buy in a way, and they had to sell it.
Yeah, I've seen situations like this. this would never happen with one of my clients. Obviously, we are there exactly to avoid these kind of issues. But I've been visiting Château with my clients, and where the sales agent has told me, like, this is a disaster situation. The people selling didn't know what they were getting into. They bought it either sight unseen or just they came and visited it once, made a quick decision, and didn't have the advice around them to know what they were getting into. And yeah, I mean, I have seen situations where that has happened and they can't sell the Château now for not even close to what they paid for it. So it's a lesson, a big lesson, expensive lesson to find out later of like, oh, what have I done?
Just to be a bit cheeky, because it's like asking you, what's the cost of a car? Obviously, there's a very, very broad spectrum. But, a lot of people dream about buying a cheap castle, something like, I don't know, maybe like €500,000. So which probably means it's not in a very good shape. What is a credible renovation budget, for those like cheap castle? Because like it looks cheap, but probably is not because of the renovations. Yeah. Like if you could kind of inform people about that kind of reality, when there are serious renovations to be taken care of.
Yes. I mean, look, you're right. It is a hard question because it depends on the size of the Château, the age, the condition. If I was to give a bit of like general guidance, I would say a cost per square meter is probably a good way of thinking about it, because then it covers, if it's a petit Château, like just maybe 400 or 500 square meters, and up to, some Château is like 1,000 square meters, the main building, plus you got all the dépendance, the outbuildings. So, all right. So if you were renovating the entire thing, like gutting it and new electricity, plumbing, let's put the roof to one side for a second, but just the inside, I would say minimum 1,000 per square meter. Okay. And really, it's probably going to be more if you want to be doing like more high-end finishes. I've seen Château renovations go up to 4,000 per square meter, which is a lot. That's huge. That's really like luxury high-end. So 1,000 to 15.
But that's a range, at least.
Yeah,
that's a range.
It's a big range, obviously. I'd say more like in the 1,000 to 1,500 per square meter is a kind of standard maybe rates.
You put the roof on the side. I suppose it's because the roof on itself is usually like one of the main expenses when there's something to be done there, isn't it?
Correct. It's the biggest. It's usually my first question to the sales agent: what is the condition of the roof? And I mean, not I'm not saying I don't take their word for it, but we also need to check that as well independently for our clients and make sure that the agent said it's in good condition. So, okay, well, let's just double check this. So if you had to replace an entire roof, again, that's another how long is a piece of string, but basically the rule of thumb is if it's a very complex roof, like a lot of like turrets, a lot of like ups and downs, shapes, then this gets very expensive, because if you think about it in square meters, there's just a lot of tiles to replace, a lot of complexity. If you have, for example, like on a dépendance, like one of the outbuildings, just a nice rectangular roof, it's actually not that expensive. You might do the whole thing for 30,000, 40,000.
So it boils down to the geometry in a thing.
Yes,
in a way.
The geometry, the square meters, and the complexity, and the materials as well. Often though, even on an old Château roof, you don't have to replace the whole thing, but you must maintain it yearly or every 2 years max. But if it's old, and chances are it's an old roof, you need to send someone up on the roof every year. They need to get rid of any broken tiles, replace them, clean it, get rid of any moss, treat the roof to prevent moss coming back quickly. And if you do this every year, sometimes even on an old roof, you can get another 10, 20 years out of it. So the maintenance is putting a little bit of money in each year could save you hundreds of thousands in the long run.
Okay, good. Well, very good tip. But obviously, before they get to that, there is this initial step, which is finding and buying the castle. I've read that apparently 30% of French properties never even eat like an open market, like, real estate agents, like they're sold off market through personal networks and stuff like this. So how would you say someone sitting in Texas or Sydney, could compete with that, for example?
I honestly think if you were trying to buy a property in France remotely, you'll never get to see those off-market properties. You can either accept that and just deal with that, or you can have people like us here on the ground that in the game, so to speak, in the network and knowing about these off-market properties. So I think you sort of make that decision of, am I willing to pass up all the off-market opportunities and just like look at properties that I can find online? That's fine. Or if you want to have access to the off-market properties, then yes, you're going to have to work with professionals who have access to these.
And people locally. Because actually, well, speaking of locally, I think I'll try to quote you. You've said that clients, they risk overpaying without local knowledge. That's I think how you call it. Do you have some examples about that, so that they understand? And it's funny because we were actually talking about this before this interview, like some French specific sayings, like "tu me prends pour un Américain," do you think I'm an American? Like the French may try to squeeze more money out of you if you don't have that local knowledge, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think, a big part of our role when we are supporting our clients and assisting them in a purchase is to gather data on how much this house that you've fallen in love with, it's advertised at 800,000 or 1 million or 200,000, doesn't matter. The research is the same. We have to find out what is the cost per square meter for the area. What are comparable sales? All of this makes sense, but if you don't know how to do that, that's when you can easily overpay. So you rely on experts to get you this data and this information. And look, Château is honestly harder to do that because if you can imagine when you're valuing a house or an apartment, you can just type in the postcode. I know the websites and we've got software that helps us with this, but I can basically type in a postcode, property type, and get quite a lot of good data that will show me this is the cost per square meter for this property type in that area. But with Château, there's not that many of them. It's not going to be like
and it's always
hundreds
a bit unique.
of sales, and they're all so different. So that is a little bit more subjective. That kind of we need to just rely on how long has it been on the market. We try to find comparables. Of course, we take into account the size of the Château and the condition of it. But valuing a Château is much harder. But again, we do our best to try and correctly value them for our clients. But yeah, I've seen, again, properties where the seller that's trying to sell to us, they have way overpaid because they just didn't do the research. Hundreds of thousands, like a lot over the market rates. And then we're sort of here to tell them, sorry, but this house is only worth this much. I know you're asking that much, but you're never going to get that.
Yeah, okay. Well, because we are on the, I would say, controversial or hot topics, one infamous things about France is its bureaucracy. But so obviously, everyone thinks it's very complex with the property planning, the notaries, the notaire, the diagnostic, and all of that. But is it really that complex, or is it just something like if you're educated enough or assisted, get some coaching or whatever?
No, I do believe it's very complicated. I don't think it's an exaggeration. I have found that and I can give many examples of how I find French bureaucracy complicated, which I'm not really selling France here in this way, but I'm being honest. Setting up my company, for example, very hard. Much easier in Australia, but I'm here by choice, so I let me specify that. But it was really hard to set up a company in France. You've done it too. It's very bureaucratic. Buying a house in France, yes, it is very bureaucratic. But can it go smoothly? Absolutely. Like as long as you do your homework and you have the correct professionals in place, it's actually not that bad. I think when the bureaucracy mounts up and becomes overwhelming to you is when you don't know what you're doing. So that's when you really need to have professionals in your team, so to speak, to make sure that you know what's going on, you know that you're not getting the wool pulled over your eyes, you know you're not making an expensive mistake. And then, I have seen purchases, especially in Château, that even when we have really good professionals around us, which we do, it's still complicated. And I've had clients say to me, thank God you guys were here. I never could have got through this actual, just the steps of buying this property if you guys weren't here explaining everything to us. So yeah, I think the bureaucracy is real, but it is manageable if you have the right people around you.
I think yes. I mean, you're right, because if I can comment on that, first, I think it's made to protect the customers usually. So well, the buyer or the client. So well, obviously then it creates friction, but to the client's or buyer's interest. And also, all those layers, in a way, they create an artificial bubble, creating jobs, like regulations, GDPR, you name it, it's full of that. But again, the end game is to protect the end client. And so it does create a lot of admin friction. But when times are hard, like unfortunately today, like we can see a bit more stability than in other markets as well. So hopefully it balances out. Yeah. There is the price. Well, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. I've done some research. I've seen like the average price, I've seen like the median, but not average, of a property in Melbourne is like 900,000 Australian dollars. For that price, you can literally buy like a 20-bedroom castle in France. Maybe not the biggest castle ever, but you could still do that. So I'd say, why aren't more Americans doing it then?
Why aren't more Americans
or Australians?
Australians? Well, the Aussie dollar is really bad. I mean, that does not help, honestly. But it's a very interesting question. I mean, there's a lot of barriers. You have to get the right to live here.
Yeah, the visa.
So the visa thing is very real. For example, the clients we signed the acte de vente this morning, they were very successful in their visas. You might have helped them.
Well, good.
And they got the talent visa. Was it the entrepreneur visa? I think it's called, good. Because they are coming here to set up a commercial activity. So that visa type can work. But I think if you're just coming here to live and you want to maybe find a job, I'm not sure how
finding a job is harder.
That's definitely a barrier. I think if it was easier, I think probably more people actually would do it, because you're right. The values of our properties in Australia, UK, US, comparably what you get for the same amount of money is quite incredible. Like people look at these Châteaux and they're like, how is this the cost of a 1-bedroom apartment in Sydney? It is remarkable. I just think it is a big jump to just pack up your life in your home country and go and live in a Château in France. I think you have to be really, really wanting that dream to make that reality.
Okay. Well, okay. No, it's a good insight, and I think there's definitely the visa stuff is probably creates a lot of frictions there. Also, there's this again. Well, let's say. Well, in your opinion, do you think it is delusional for someone to like come to France, buy like a 200 years old castle and try to renovate it on their own, or like, I'll be cheeky, say like using YouTube, videos that they see, do you think that's delusional?
I think I wouldn't call it delusional, but you need to know when you have to bring in experts. Like DIY is fine for some things, but for things like electricity, plumbing, the roof, like you need a certificate at the end. Like, because when you resell your property, you have to show, here's all the work that I've done and it's compliant. So I'm not going to sell a Château, or I'll put it the other way around. I would not buy a Château where they can't show to me that the electricity was done by an electrician, for example, or the roof was done by roof professionals. So you have to know your limits. But on the interior design side of things, for sure. I mean, like I think there's a lot to be said for, people want to come here, live that dream, exercise their kind of creativity. And I think on the interiors, there's definitely room for that. You just got to know when to bring in the professionals.
No, you're right. And actually, it made me realize, because we have all of those grades, like a coefficient énergétique and la performance énergétique, or like you were saying, electricity, there's norms, there's all of that. So, well, you can do everything on your own, but if it's not done by a professional, then you have no certificates, you have no proof that it's compliant with the norms. And also you may be lacking, you may lower the value, because if it's done by yourself, there's no 10 years warranty like there would be with a professional. So yeah, all that combined. Yeah, okay. Well, I understand.
That's right.
Okay, this question is going to be very difficult, sorry. if you have to convince someone to buy a property in France with one sentence, but you cannot use wine, cheese, or baguette.
Okay, yeah. In France, I'm convincing them, am I?
You're
Why
convincing
to
them.
buy here? Oh, this might have been one of the ones I don't have a good answer for. Let me think.
I mean, it's
Okay, something that sprung to mind when I read this question, I don't think I'm answering it correctly, but in France, and I tell this honestly to my clients, in France, you're not buying to make money, you're buying for the pleasure. We Australians, I know Americans do this, we expect our properties to go up in value. And that's normal because it does, it goes like that, mostly. In France, it doesn't, which I'm kind of speaking against my own interest, but it's like this, kind of down right now. So I think I'm not selling like why to buy in France, but it's the reality. You're buying here for pleasure. It's a great country to live. You can get great property for your money. But, you know, we don't really flip houses here and expect to make profit at the end. You're buying here to enjoy it.
Yeah, right. I mean, some do, but you're right. It seems to be more rare. And also the market fluctuates a lot less. I mean, it could go up, and it does. And it also does go down, but like it's not the roller coaster that you can see in the US or the UK. Like if it goes down, it doesn't go down like minus 50%, for example.
Correct. And I do tell my clients this. I say, look, you're not going to make probably a lot of money on this property, even if you hold it for 10, 15, 20 years, but you're also not going to lose money on it either. It's slow and steady is how I describe it.
You do work pretty much all across France. Well, let's not make a lot of friends, but like, so Paris versus the countryside. So, you know, which one do you think expats romanticize the most and they shouldn't?
Okay, let me think on that. Okay, so which one do they romanticize about the most? Do you mean to live here or?
Yeah, obviously to buy a property and live there. Yeah.
Okay. That is a very interesting question. I think Paris is a harder city to live in than people understand. I experienced that firsthand. I love Paris and I still do. I found it difficult to raise young children there, for example. It's normal, like there's not much green space. I want my kids to be outdoors, and so I think that was a big adjustment as an Australian. But I still love Paris, and I still have a little flat there, and we love going. I think the other thing that might be over-romanticized is countryside properties. I think I have had clients, and this happened to me last week, when we're discussing what kind of property they want, they say, I want a beautiful countryside property, I want outbuildings, I want this. And then we visited like 10 or 12 of them. And at the end, they realized, I don't think I can live in the countryside. I need to be near the shops and amenities. And like in doing this experience, I realized I need to be in the village. So I think that might be like slightly over-romanticized, like the countryside, remote sort of like lifestyle. That's really a choice, but not for everyone.
Okay, so as we're here to make friends, and I'm being ironic, French real estate agents, are they usually your biggest allies or biggest headaches?
Both. I'm hedging there. Honestly, the real estate agents can be my best friend. Like they are such a good source of information, local knowledge. They will tell me stuff that they will not tell a regular buyer. Like I can say, listen, really tell me how much does the seller really want? Tell me like why really are they selling? You know, how long has it been on the market? That's a standard question. But I will get a lot more like deep information about the condition of the property as well. So I find that they can be very, very useful in helping me analyze whether this property is good for my client. Of course, I run into difficult agents who don't like partnering up with us. Like that's the reality. But look, as we have been here for a few years now and our reputation has been growing, now all the agencies will work with us. But occasionally you get sort of one or two individual agents that are a bit like funny about it. And, you know, French real estate agents, I guess, do have a bit of a reputation for never calling you back. And to be honest, this works to our advantage. If the French real estate agents did always email you back and call back, people wouldn't need us as much because their customer service would be good enough. And so in a way, it kind of works to our advantage. But overall, I would honestly say that I love working with the French real estate agents. We have forged very positive and good relationships with them. And honestly, we couldn't do our job without them. It's really, in the end, we all want the sale to go ahead if it is right for the client and the seller. And so we're all kind of, in the end, we work as a team to get that job done.
Okay. Well, good to know. So as we're getting towards the end of this, for someone that would be watching this right now, what would be like kind of the one piece of advice you would give them? And obviously, if they're considering, making the jump and buying a French property, a piece of advice that you would have liked to have like 5 or 6 years ago when you yourself moved here.
I wish I knew about companies like yours. So I speak fluent French, but when we moved to France, I did everything on my own, like the healthcare, the signing up the kids to school, the bank account, the driver's license, all of that stuff. I did it all on my own. I didn't know that there were companies that could help me with this. And I wish I just threw a bit of money at that because I feel like I spent 12 months of my life.
We should hire you.
Yeah. I feel like I spent 12 months of my life on the phone to bureaucratic agencies, and I really don't like doing that stuff. So I would have happily...
We don't either.
Yeah, I would have happily engaged a company like yours to just handle it. So I think knowing the support that is out there is probably a really good start because you don't know what you don't know. And it's like, who do I even ask for this? So now I have built up a really good address book of partners and associates who I refer all my clients to help with all the immigration and all that stuff I just mentioned. And so knowing that is there is probably the thing that I missed that I wish I had.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you for the
and I'm not sucking up. Yeah,
no, that's great.
True.
Well, Ben, this has been absolutely fantastic. I've learned a lot of stuff actually because I'm not buying castles myself. So it's great information. Before we wrap it all up, if people want to get in touch with you, how can they reach out?
So they can reach us through our website, which is milieuxproperty.com. We're also very present on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and we do a little bit of TikTok. I'm honestly not very good at that, but most of the social media channels you can find us and the website, of course.
Okay, well, brilliant. And I've known you for a few years now, and I know you never disappoint. We've never had a bad review, so you're the guy.
I feel the same way.
Thank you so much, Ben. It's been great having you. Hopefully we'll talk soon. Thanks.
My pleasure. Thanks, Fabian.